Hi everyone, welcome to our presentation on Rett syndrome. My name is Sarah Buchanan. This presentation was also completed by Antonia and Kylie. I hope you find this to be very informative, as I myself did not know very much about Rett syndrome, so I learned quite a bit doing this presentation. Our table of contents, so what is Rett syndrome, who does it affect, what causes Rett syndrome, stages of Rett syndrome, what is the impact on academic functioning for students with Rett syndrome, and what kinds of therapies are used for students with Rett syndrome. So the stages of Rett syndrome, the first stage is usually around 6 to 18 months. There's a developmental arrest. And then somewhere around 1 to 4 years old, there's a developmental regression, whereas these children would be not matching their peers or children of the average children of the same age in terms of developmental aspects. They'd kind of seem to be regressing a little bit instead of progressing. And then somewhere around the 2 to 10 range, it's pseudostationary, from my understanding. That's kind of when things stay the same. They're not really regressing. Things are not really deteriorating. It says that there's behavioral improvement. They can have hand use, communication, so things are kind of more balanced, I guess, during this period. But then, however, once the child reaches around 10 years old and above, that's when there's late motor deterioration. So a lot of stuff starts to deteriorate, and a lot of things start to they lose a lot of movement. They become rigid. Some communication can go, things like that. So it is something that kind of debilitates over the years. I apologize, there's a phone ringing, but I'm going to keep going. We watched this video on Rett syndrome for about 3 minutes, and then I will continue talking. Firstly, though, I want to say the one thing I like about this video is that it starts off it made me kind of sad when I watched it first, because it does highlight a lot of the negative things that happen to a student with Rett syndrome over the years. However, it does sort of change to a more positive side at the end, which I found really heartfelt. So even though these children do go through a lot, and they may have restrictions, and they may have things that they're not able to do, they still are children at the end of the day who have desires and fun and like to learn. And I thought it was really refreshing to kind of start it off on more of a realistic but negative note, and then take it to more of a positive note, so that you realize that these still are children that still do live lives to the best of their abilities.
In your eyes, it looks like you're gonna cry, and I wonder what you're feeling right now, and I wonder how to tell you I'm around. And I'll catch you when you fall down. When your world is turning, you're there burning. You feel like nothing's gonna change. When you're down there dying, just call out my name. I'll be there to hold you again. Distance can take its toll, but for now, safe in my soul. And I wonder if you hear me through my eyes, and if I forget to say it, they don't lie. And I bet they see it better than I. The world is turning, and you're there burning. You feel like nothing's gonna change. When you're down there dying, just call out my name. I'll be there to hold you again, real close, never far, real close. It don't matter where you are, as long as the moon's with the stars. When the world is turning and you're left burning, feel like nothing's gonna change. When you're down there dying, just call out my name. The world is turning, and you're left burning, feel like nothing's gonna change. When you're down there dying, just call out my name. I'll be there to hold you again, real close, I'm afraid. Be there to hold you again, my love, my friend.
Okay, so that is our video. Moving on to what is Rett syndrome. So the video did kind of touch a little bit about symptoms and things like that, but basically it's a rare, severe neurological disorder that affects mostly females. It's usually discovered in the first 2 years of life. Diagnosis can feel overwhelming. It used to be part of the autism spectrum disorder, and we will learn in a little while that there are some symptoms that the students display and some behaviors that they display that I think can easily make it misdiagnosed as autism, because some of them kind of overlap, but it is different. It's mostly genetically based, and signs of Rett syndrome in babies usually are not apparent until after the first 6 months. I think that's mostly because an infant up until 6 months doesn't really hit too many developmental milestones, maybe like smiling, laughing, holding their head up. But it's the main ones like sitting up, crawling, walking. Those typically don't happen until a little bit later. So certain delays and things probably wouldn't be noticed too much until around 6-month mark. How does Rett syndrome affect the lives of people who grew up with it? Many girls with Rett syndrome can live into middle age. It affects the central nervous system. It's a common cause of severe intellectual disabilities. Problems associated with Rett syndrome include breathing, increased injury during childhood, higher potential for brain damage, and a decrease in alertness. There's a higher likelihood of being bullied. Seizures, convulsions, and scoliosis are common. Constipation, and then gastroesophageal reflux disease, along with gallbladder problems and gallstones, can also occur. Have disruptive sleep patterns at night. I apologize, sorry if you can hear hammering or something. There's construction going on next door. My house is as loud as anything, of course, when I have to film a video, so my apologies. What causes Rett syndrome? It's mostly caused by genetics. There's no cure for it. Early diagnosis and treatment may help girls and their families live better lives. It's caused by the mutation of a gene on the X chromosome, though how its mutation leads to Rett's is still unclear. It's typically caused by a random mutation in the DNA instead of the inheritance of the faulty gene from their parents. Males that develop the Rett syndrome mutation rarely live past birth, which is actually really interesting. I did not know that. And, well, it's really sad, but I mean, it's interesting to learn that it affects females more than males. Males have 1 X chromosome and girls have 2 X chromosomes. So this is a chart on stages of Rett syndrome. If you'd like to take a look at this, you can pause it now. I unfortunately, for the purpose of this video, don't have time to go into too much detail, but a lot of it is things that we do touch on in the presentation. Rett syndrome, academic functioning. So Rett syndrome may have an impact on the student's academic development. However, there are many resources for parents and teachers to help the students succeed in the school environment. So it says here, through the belief of the parents, teachers, and therapists are now seeing improvements along with early intervention and inclusion, effective therapies, and new drugs. There is more hope for the future of students with RS. So this part here talks about like empowering these students to be able to use few words like yes or no, finding ways to teach them how to have access to those types of vocabulary. Just those two things will open up a world for them. It says, imagine if they can use one purposeful movement to operate a computer and have learned to read. The whole world is accessible to them. We have to continue to find ways to reach our girls and teach them. But most of all, we have to believe in them, because all of the modern technology in the world, all of the switches to computers, all the bells and whistles will not work if we do not believe and trust and expect it to happen. The theorist Howard Gardner has proposed a theory of multiple intelligences, and his work has been beneficial in the education system. He has identified 7 different intelligences. Those intelligences are logical, mathematical, linguistic, musical, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. Students with Rett syndrome may demonstrate the following deficits when learning and communicating: comprehension, fluctuations, concentration, response time, memory, understanding time. Similar to typically developing children, when teaching is interesting and fun, all students learn better. So again, here's the comprehension, the fluctuation, concentration, response time, and memory. One thing I want to pull out from here to mention is people who spend a lot of time with students with RS believe that students with RS understand more than they are able to communicate to us. They typically understand more than they are able to tell us. A student may look like they are disinterested or unresponsive, when in reality they are focusing on what is being said. So this goes in. They have a harder time with their concentration and with their focus than most other children do. Also, what else did I want to mention? So there's understanding time. Rett syndrome has been most often diagnosed as autism, cerebral palsy, or non-specific developmental delay. It presents many challenges, but with love, therapy, and assistance, those with the syndrome can benefit from school and community activities well into middle age and beyond. There's inclusion in the classroom is as important as possible. We have this image that just says, I know a girl who puts the Rett in pretty. That was just something we found that we thought was interesting and relevant. So different therapies used for students with Rett syndrome. There are many kinds of therapies that can be used for students with Rett syndrome, such as ABA, discrete trial training, so DDT, Lovis method, auditory integration training, AIT, craniosacral therapy, CST, and sensory integration therapy, SIT. Other therapies to assist physically and cognitively are music therapy, massage therapy, hydrotherapy, and hippotherapy. So these slides just kind of show you what these methods are used for. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into too much detail of them, but you are welcome to take a look and learn about it. So these are all the therapies. This is a picture of a little girl doing music therapy. There is actually a YouTube video about this if anyone is interested in watching it. Just type in little girl doing music therapy, Rett syndrome. So therapies used for students with Rett syndrome. Physical therapy may benefit students with RS by reducing apraxia, stimulating hand use to assist in mobility, achieving better balance reactions, promoting better coordination and balance, reducing ataxia, improved body awareness, influence scoliosis, give better range of motion of the joints, reduce muscle pain, maintain and improve mobility, counteract spasticity, and increase productive responses. So these just talk about the common physical therapy IEP goals for students with Rett syndrome. So things like improving the ability to get on and off the school bus, accessing playground equipment, etc. So this is a picture of a little girl doing physical therapy. This little girl has Rett syndrome, and this would be some sort of a walker that she uses in her home, it looks like. So some IEP goals for students with Rett syndrome continued are common communication goals, so things like making choices, increased socialization with peers, and then occupational therapy IE goals, so like develop ability to access communication devices, maximize hand use for functional activities. So just things trying to help have their school experience be as positive as possible. That is the end of our presentation. These are our references for the video, for the images, for the information. I just want to say thank you for listening. I hope that you found this to be informative. I apologize again for any background noise that you heard during the presentation. I hope everyone has a good rest of the semester, and for everyone who's graduating, I wish you the best. Take care.